Alrighty, I'm starting a little bit late today. We had a little technical glitch, but we are good. And today's going to be one of the most important things that we ever go over, because it's going to be about circadian rhythm, and we could talk about this constantly. There is so much to this, but I just want to just bring up some of the things that we're going to be going over, and I just want to remind everybody first of all that we do this program every Thursday at 12 noon. It live streams on NutriMost USA on Facebook. So go to Facebook, go to NutriMost USA. And actually, if you're watching it live streaming it, you see that here. However, you may go find us on NutriMost USA, not know that we actually live stream. You can also go to the NutriMost support page. That is a member-only page. And remember, not only do we live stream every Thursday at 12 noon, but we do a simultaneous broadcast with KDKA Radio from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And so we're broadcasting with the very first radio station in the world on KDKA from 9 to 10 a.m. on Saturdays. And we're live streaming, and the place to go, though, is to watch on the live stream. But, one of the things I want to talk about circadian rhythm. And one of the things about this is that just in 2017, the Nobel Prize for Medicine was given to Jeffrey Hall, Michael Rosbash, and Michael Young. And they discovered the molecular mechanisms that are controlling circadian rhythm. That's what they got that's what they got this for. And they were two different universities, actually. You have Jeff Hall and Michael Rosbash were at Brandeis University in Boston, and Michael Young was at the Rockefeller University in New York. And what they do is they did a number of different things. They isolated the period gene. They later then discovered the protein, which was PER, which accumulates at night, and then it degrades during the day. There's a couple things with that, though, because it's made in the cytoplasm, and it had to get to the nucleus, and they want to know, how does it get to the nucleus? So there's some more research, and that's actually where Michael Young came up with and found that identified a couple other, basically identified other genes, and he identified other proteins for that, and that was TIM, which actually binds to PER, and that allows it to cross. Since that time, they have actually discovered a number of other factors involved with this, but they've identified these various proteins. They've identified another gene. There's the clock gene. There's the BMAL gene. There's the double time gene, which encodes DBT proteins. This is, and then what they also found is that this follows this 24-hour light-dark cycle. In that 24-hour light-dark cycle, the thing about that is that that's affected by light. And we'll get into that in a little bit, because it's a particular type really it's a particular cell that does this, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. But your biological clock, we know that it's located in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN, of the hypothalamus. And so here you have circadian rhythm can affect so many different things. It affects almost everything in the body. So we're looking at mood, blood pressure, temperature, hormones, metabolism, cognition, memory, sleep, wakefulness, energy levels. It affects your liver, affects adrenals, it affects leptin receptors. It affects so many different things. And so when we start to take a look at this and see this, and what we know is that this internal clock is in sync with the light-dark cycles. And that's one of the big things that we want to talk about, because the reality of it is that this plays such a crucial role in basically how your body's going to live. It plays a crucial role in everything from aging to when it is out of sync. There's going to be disruption of different body systems. There's going to be chronic illness. You're going to age faster. It can cause depression. It can cause bipolar conditions. It can cause anxiety. It can cause many, many diseases. In fact, when we start to take a look at this, and these are just some of the studies with this, we see one of these studies here. It links our microbiome and the circadian rhythm, and this was basically a simple study that showed that the intestinal microbiome regulates our body composition. In other words, when we start to take a look at when we start to take a look and we talk about body composition, we are looking at that your body can gain weight just because the microbiome is out of sync with your circadian rhythm. And you have to understand how big of a thing this is, because what they uncovered when they found this was that your circadian rhythm and your microbiome work intact. And as they talk about, there's a FIL3 and the circadian rhythm. And what that is, there's a gene expression, but it's regulated by the circadian rhythm. And the lower the levels are of this NFIL3, then the leaner or the lower the BMI. And they did this in mice, but there's a lot of evidence that says that this can be affected as in humans as well. And then we see that cancer actually alters the circadian rhythm to survive. And that happens to be by the way that there's it's how proteins are folded in the mitochondria. And by the way, that's such a huge thing. But what we're looking at here is that the way the tumors grow, that when the circadian rhythm is off, it can actually kill other cells, but the cancer cells are actually able to survive. And so they're able to use this. And what we see is that, and this is the study that goes with this, and this is this mitochondrial R211 axis suppresses the circadian, this what they call PERK, MIR211. And this is all about unfolded protein response and how this helps basically tumor growth. And we see this in study after study. We see that aging is governed by circadian rhythm. And this is one of the biggest things that they've noticed for really a long period of time. This is that the stem cell functions according to the day and night cycles. It's the circadian rhythm. And we see this that aged stem cells reprogram their daily rhythmic functions to adapt to stress. And when we see this and we understand how this is and how it makes these different changes, and actually in the machinery of how our bodies really work, that's just a huge thing. And so one of the things what we now know is that we talk about that there's certain cell types within the brain that help control the circadian rhythm. And we're going to go over some of this after we go through this, because there's just so many. There's some other studies. We see that circadian rhythm is linked to neurotransmitters and mood disorders. We know that circadian rhythm changes, actually the changes in the circadian rhythm worsen Parkinson's. It may actually, if you can keep the circadian rhythm balanced, it may delay Parkinson's. There's some evidence, and this was a study that showed that ADHD, whether it be in a child or in an adult, may actually just be a circadian imbalance. It may be the circadian rhythm is out of sync, because when you disrupt the circadian rhythm, you disrupt and cause inflammatory diseases. We know that it causes these neurochemical changes in very specific neurotransmitters. We know that it decreases somatostatin in the amygdala. We know that can contribute to bipolar disorder, for instance. We know that it can contribute to almost any of the inflammatory diseases within the body. We know that there's so many other things that even hearing loss is affected by circadian rhythm. What they found out is that when you have hearing loss, if it was due to for instance, excess noise at night, it's completely different than if it was due to excess noise during the day. Depending on how your circadian rhythm expresses itself, because all these different hormones, all these different neurotransmitters are basically revolve around your body's circadian rhythm. And one of the things that has been just huge, and this is later circadian timing of food intake is associated with increased body fat. This is really an interesting study because you've heard this for years. And what I mean that you've heard it for years, you heard that don't eat late at night. If you eat late at night, it's easier for you to cause weight. Well, what they found is that, and they can really monitor where your circadian balance is by your melatonin, for instance. Like when does your sleep start? And which is another thing, that sleep is going to be off if you don't have your circadian balance correct. But what they found is that the later that you eat your food, the more that you have it near when melatonin is being excreted, that the higher your BMI is. Not only is it the higher the BMI, but you have more fat. And even when you just gain weight, the body composition is completely different. So, and that's one of the things that we've seen, and there's another, let me see if I have it on, I believe I have it in here as well, is that mice under caloric restriction self-impose a temporal restriction of food intake is revealed by an automated feeder system. Now, that doesn't really tell what this is all about. Here's what this is about. And what this is, and it really changes the way that and I've used this a number of times, this study, and the reason is that it changes really the way that we have to look at so many of these studies. And what I mean by that is that when you eat at different times, it affects your body weight. And that's really what this study says. So even though it went on and it talked about this automated feeder system, what it was is that mice are nocturnal animals. Yet most studies are done when the researchers are awake. So they're done during the day. And what they found was that when they ate at wrong times, that even if they would reduce their calories, even when they reduced their calories, they couldn't lose weight. And for a mice, their right time is at night. So that during the day, they would reduce the calories and they wouldn't lose weight. Yet when they ate the exact same amount of calories at night, they would lose weight. In fact, it was about a 25% difference in their calories. So what they're saying is that just by the fact that you're eating at different times, those different times are affecting the way that your body works. And so let's take a look at, and let me see if I have anything else on here. Oh, this is here's what I want to talk about. So how do you affect your circadian rhythm? Like, what can we do to balance it? Well, we know there's certain things that will throw the circadian rhythm off. And this is one. We know that reduced expression of circadian clock genes in male alcoholic patients. And what they showed was, and there's a couple different studies with this. One just shows when you're chronically drinking alcohol that you disrupt your circadian rhythm. Not only do you disrupt it, but what they found out is that it disrupts there's certain clocks. One of the things about the circadian rhythm is it's not like one rhythm throughout the entire body. Different tissue they have their own clock. So they have their own circadian clock. So you can have something that disrupts one clock and not the other clock. And what we find out is that when you chronically drink, that you're disrupting the liver's clock, and that actually disrupts and can create alcoholism. But more than that, that once you disrupt that clock, I mean, and it really just is amazing because it's been associated with so many chronic diseases. And for instance, let me see, do I have another one? Okay, hold on. And this is the disruption of the clock components, clock in BMAL1 leads to hypoinsulinemia and diabetes. And this is from Nature magazine. And what this is about is that your pancreas is directly linked to the circadian clock. And what it shows is that this circadian rhythm, that once that gets out of balance, they showed that it actually regulates insulin. So in other words, that the islets of these islet secreting cells called the beta cells within the pancreas, what we now know is that they have their own circadian clock, and once that circadian rhythm gets off, now you're going to have hyperinsulinemia. You're going to have it become pre-diabetic, diabetic, and this is just huge. And so now we know that these reprogramming of the circadian clock can actually be done by nutrition. And here's the thing about this. You know, when we talk about the fact, are these diseases like ADHD, we're looking at the fact that these could actually be circadian imbalances, which is really just huge when you start to take a look at this. But it becomes even more than that. You know, this article here talks about reprogramming the circadian clock by nutritional challenge. And what this is about, and they talk about, if you see it says high-fat diet reprograms the circadian transcriptome and metabolome. And what that means, what they're talking about here is, they're saying that a high-fat diet is going to mess up your circadian clock. And I really believe that, in my opinion, after reading this, they're talking about how the high-fat diet affects the mechanism and it disrupts the circadian rhythm. And we know that it causes things like obesity. We know that it can cause high blood pressure. We know that it can cause mood disorders. We know that it can cause anxiety. We know that it can cause all of these challenges. And here they're talking about the fact that, hey, if you have a high-fat diet, it's going to throw that off. But I tell you what, after reading it, I don't believe that that's what that study is about. I believe that that study is about that when you have a high-calorie intake, it's high calories because one of the things that we do know is that we do know that when you have a calorie restriction, the calorie restriction actually, one of the things that it does is it does bring that back into the circadian balance, back into effect. So these are some of the things that we do know. So let's just look at, here's the thing. When we start to look at how your body works, when we start to look at what creates this and allows it to get out of sync, and there's a number of different things. And what I'm going to do now is I'd like to just talk about the fact that, like, how does this happen? How does this occur? And we have some weird noises on here just now. How does this occur? And there are certain things that are going to create this. See, one of the things, we used to think that there was only rods and cones. In fact, if you remember in school, you learned that your eye has these rods, it has cones, and that measures light. But now what we find out is that there's something called the IPRGC. And what that is that's intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. And this is a subset of ganglion cells that go directly, and what they do is they affect the retinal hypothalamic tract. And so, in other words, it's what we now realize is that they can measure very low levels of blue light. And so even when people are blind, they can actually know light and dark from this. And so it's all about measuring in the retina melanopsin and taking that information to the SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the hypothalamus. And once you get it there, this is that master regulator of your circadian rhythm. And so here, and we can get into this a little bit more in depth on really how it works, why it works, what are the optics of this that are really just affecting this, because there's a lot of other projections within these within the neurons. We won't get into basically too great with this, but the one thing is that we know that it's the blue light that really sets and affects your circadian rhythm. But here's the problem: is it's one thing when you have this we know that it can affect your mood. We know that if you don't get enough sunlight, for instance, that it causes depression. It can cause anxiety, and there's certain reasons for this because of a part of a limbic area within the brain that's not as responsive to the various stimuli. But and once we understand that light is really a form of it's part of our health. It's part of our healing, and we really need it. We really need light to actually heal. So one of the things I want to come down to, and it's light affects the mitochondria really, and it really becomes down to a point is that when we're lacking these electrons that we get from the light, and those electrons, we talk about the fact that why you have to be grounded. We talk about the fact that why you need that your body gets electrons from food. However, it also gets many other things from food as well, because food affects your hormones. Food affects your nerves. But there's also, if you don't have the electrons, if you don't have, Dr. Budwig talked about a particular type of, it's like a cottage cheese with flaxseed oil, and talks about it with cancers and things like that. What it really comes down to is this electron cloud, that it's able to donate more electrons. It's very electron dense. We believe that DHA, for instance, is an amazing conductor. There's many of the doctors that are talking about this, and that the electrical conduction is through DHA, which would be through fish. But here's the thing. What we know is that right now, when you have all these different electrical appliances, for instance, and you have things like your computer, one of the things we have on our computer, and particularly at night, we have a blue light blocker, and it's going to block blue light. And if you don't block blue light, you're going to have some issues. And the reason is that when you have this non-native blue light, this after dark, what's happening is it's affecting things like other neurotransmitters. It's affecting cortisol. It interrupts leptin. It affects your insulin production. It affects your melatonin. So all these things are going to just really disrupt your circadian rhythm, but they're going to disrupt the way your body works, and it's going to cause problems. And this is a major thing. So what do you do to enhance the way your body's circadian rhythm works? Well, the first thing you do is you want to have exposure of your eyes to the sun first thing in the morning. And when you do that, so you want to take off any glasses. You want to have it completely and just be able to get the light. That's one of the things I do in the morning. I always try to get exposure to that. You can do earthing in the morning. Go barefoot. It's the best time to do it. Go barefoot out in the grass with that first morning sun. That's going to basically awaken that up. It's going to send, and you're getting those electrons there. It really helps set the rhythm, but you're basically allows you to get these negative electrons. It helps you. And you do the grounding which is a great sort of the largest source of electrons that there is basically the earth. And so you want to be exposed to that. You want to expand that. And so that's one of the very first thing you want to do in the morning is you want to get that exposure. So now what do you do? Now the other thing is, you want to use things like blue blocker glasses, and it's going to be particular. I'm trying to think. I always tell people what the what is it, 380 to 470, I believe, is. There's one company, Blue Tech, sells these glasses. You can go on Amazon, has them. basically though you want to protect yourself from non-native blue light, particularly after dark. You want to be able to eat foods that are high in DHA. You want to have foods that are in season, and that comes down to those electrons we talked about. See, when your body, when you have more, when you have more light, when you're exposed to more light, your body can handle carbohydrates easier. And so by looking at that, when you have more exposure to light, like and particularly when we talk about the azimuths, which is how you get your vitamin D, it has to be above a certain azimuth. And you can, there's an app you can put on your phone called D-Minder. You can get that app. It'll tell you when the azimuth is. Like right now in Pittsburgh, we can't get any vitamin D. Essentially zero. I don't care. You can say, oh, well, I'm out in the sun. You're not getting vitamin D. It really is just about zero because of the azimuth, which is the angle, and it's in those it just bounces off basically the rays that you need. So the thing about this is when you're able to get more of the electrons, more light into your body, and when your circadian rhythm is set more, you can handle carbohydrates better. When you don't, for instance, in the wintertime, your body doesn't handle carbohydrates as well. And so that's a little bit about eating a seasonal diet. And so that's when we're talking about, just as a matter of fact, from the macronutrient standpoint. But remember, it's still about, there's different chemistry within, like it just came out today or this week about aspartame in the food and certain things that asparagine, which is an amino acid, not aspartame, which we'll say aspartic acid, which is even easier to distinguish. And I'm going to do something on that. But that's, there are certain foods that affect you. We know that. Look at how alcohol affects you. Look at how coffee affects you. Look at how, like, turmeric, we know is very anti-inflammatory. So there's foods affect biochemistry, and to say that it doesn't, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. But one of the things that you want, by getting that exposure, you also help your EZ water, which is the fourth phase of water. That's Dr. Pollack's information. And you need to have light. Now, another thing you can do with your glasses, and this is something you can actually get your amber lens glasses, which is the blue blocker glasses. And what you want to do is take and put like black tape in the back of them over the top part of that. And what that'll do, in order to look at, you'll sort of like look up a little bit, because we tend to look down. We look down at our computer. Like I'm controlling my controls here. So everywhere I'm almost always have to look down. Plus the camera's up higher than what I am, so it's because it has to be above everything. So it looks like you're looking down. But once you put that, and that allows you to get that cervical curve, which is a whole other aspect. It's all about, what do you do to get your best health? Because we see these things, we see that there's certain, and it continues to just, I was reading about the scientists that identified something NMS, which is neuromedin S, which is helps with the circadian rhythm. Another thing that helps with circadian rhythm is we know that resveratrol. Resveratrol definitely helps with circadian rhythm. We know that your things like the B vitamins and CoQ10, PQQ, which is all in our NutriMost, there's a reason for that, because that helps the mitochondria. We know that the molecular hydrogen helps, allows the mitochondria to produce energy without the electron transport chain through the Jagendorf principle. I mean, there's so many different things, and you want to be able to use that. So I tell you what, if it's me, what I'm doing is you're going to, by the way, another thing is, don't eat big meals late at night. So your largest meal should be I believe that it should be your lunch. You can have a nice breakfast. They've done different studies where compared someone who ate a large breakfast versus someone who ate a large dinner. And even eating the same calories, what they find is the person who eats a large breakfast loses more weight than the person who eats a large dinner. It's not the breakfast. You know, a lot of people say, oh, so I have to eat breakfast. That's my most important meal of the day. That should be my biggest meal. That's really not what it is. The thing is, if you start your breakfast off with carbohydrates, that starts right off. The AMP, activated protein kinase pathway, goes more towards a glucose metabolism. You don't want that. So if you're going to have breakfast, you should always have a protein with that breakfast. And a larger protein meal at breakfast is great, all right? And it helps set the pathway towards the lipid metabolism instead of glucose metabolism. It helps set your circadian rhythm. But the big thing is that and this is another thing, they've shown for circadian rhythm that if you can have specific times that you eat, that is much better than one day you eat at this time, another day you eat at this time, and you're eating all over the place. Sometimes you eat a real big dinner, sometimes you eat a very light dinner, and then you eat a big breakfast, or you eat a big lunch. You want it to be about the same, and you don't want to snack. Once you snack between meals, when you hear people say, oh, just grazing and stuff all day long. I am telling you that you're disrupting the circadian rhythm within your body. It's all about maintaining that circadian rhythm. The closer you eat, when your body's producing melatonin, worse off it's going to be. So the closer you're eating at dinner time, at bedtime, you're going to have some problems. If you're on your computer at night, you got to get yourself a blue blocker. They sell them all over the place. The one I like, and I have I've used a few of them. They have the ones that are like a film that you put over your screen, and that's actually the least expensive, by the way. You know, if it's cost is an issue, just use that one. They even have controls now on the computer. You can turn them down. You can turn off the blue light on. There's certain programs that'll do that for you. I don't trust that. The one I like is it's a harder plastic, and I use it on, and it has just a lip. It's just, I took a picture for today, and I forgot to load it onto a PowerPoint to be able to show you guys, so you can see in my home. But you just put it right over the screen. It's a hard plastic, goes right over. It's sturdy. It works great. You just put it over, and it's going to, it does fantastic. And so you really want to protect yourself. You know, your TVs, keep your TVs off. You have so many of these. By the way, we don't use a regular TV. If we're going to watch something, which we very seldom watch, we don't have a TV connected. None of our TVs work. Zero. They don't work in our home. We can watch it on the computer, but on the computer, we can control. It's totally different. Sounds different, and your that blue light is different because we can control. We put the blue light blocker on that, and so you want to get exposure even when the sun goes down. So as the sun sets, you want to get exposure to your eyes. You want to have exposure throughout on your whole body, your skin, without getting burnt. You know, the body loves sun. We were designed for sun. However, you're not supposed to damage it. You're not supposed to get burnt with it. So just some exposure. And then you want to have it first thing in the morning. You want to sleep in total darkness. Total darkness. First thing in the morning, when you wake up, get your exposure to sun into your eyes without any glasses, without any contact lenses or anything like that. You want to then, late at night, as the sun's going down, get exposure. The sun go down. Once the sun goes down, you know, you're supposed to, where you're more active while the sun's up. When it's done, it's more of a resting time. But you want to protect yourself from the blue light during that period of time. You want to get yourself, eat lighter meals. High calorie meals going to throw off your circadian clock. It's going to cause aging. Once you do a calorie restriction, helps with, resets the circadian clock. Resveratrol, you know, I talk about the resveramost that we have, which is which is a liquid, much easier to be absorbed because we know that it's in capsule and tablets. It's more difficult to absorb in the digestive tract. This allows you to have great absorption of that. So these are things that you can do, and this was a award winner as far as we see that the Nobel Prize for 2017 in medicine was for understanding the circadian clock. And why is that? Because it's involved in so many things. It's involved in diabetes. It's involved in emotional disorders and sleep disorders. It's involved in obesity, to the fact that it's like 25%. You can eat 25% more if you're doing it during the day than if you did it at nighttime. I mean, it's craziness. And so many people have their circadian clock off. It's not in sync. Let's get it in sync. Let's make a difference. These are easy things you can do. It's easy to eat more fish. It's easy, and particularly if you have that roadmap that you know which fish are going to be better for you from the NutriMost Intelligence. It's going to give you a little bit of a better idea. If it's easy, it's free to do earthing. It's free to get exposure to the sun, to sunshine. You're going to eat anyway. Why don't you eat during the right periods of time? Get yourself a blue blocker glasses. Get yourself blue blocker for your computer screen. Let's get ourselves away from this blue light at night. And I'll tell you what, it will make a world of difference for you. And it's easy to do this. This is something that you can dramatically affect. Alrighty, just want to go through everything that we say today. As we say here, this information is provided on this program is for educational purposes only. Statements made have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. By providing this information, we are not diagnosing, treating, curing, mitigating, or preventing any type of disease or medical condition. This is not intended as a substitute for professional advice of any kind. So before beginning any type of natural, integrative, or conventional treatment regime, it's advisable to seek the advice of a licensed healthcare professional. I want to thank you for joining us. And this, I tell you what, I think that this is much more important than most things that you can do. I mean, we didn't realize the importance of circadian rhythm, that every single cell in our body has that clock. And by the way, one of the other things I forgot to say at the end, which I talked about during the period of time, stay away from high calories, decrease your calories, and limit alcohol. It's okay to have a glass of wine is great. We know the resveratrol is great for it. However, it can chronic use disrupts that. And by the way, we see there's research that shows that one of the reasons that women have higher protection from heart disease is because their circadian clock stays more in balance with ovarian hormones. And it's interesting because that disappears after menopause because of the fact that those hormones aren't there to be as protective. It also helps explain, they look at why do heart attacks occur more during the morning. And it turns out that it's this, they believe it's this circadian rhythm. They also find that if you have a heart attack at night, if you have a heart attack while you're sleeping, it's actually more severe because of the of circadian rhythm, because of the fact that your circadian rhythm affects so many different hormones, so many different neurotransmitters, so many proteins, peptides, all of these aspects. In each cell type has its own clock, but the master clock is your suprachiasmatic nucleus of the hypothalamus. It's regulated by these photoreceptors that are melopsin sensitive, basically in the eye, that we didn't even know about until it was back in the 1990s, 2000s, right around there. So this is relatively some new stuff, highly studied, but we're seeing some amazing things with this. And tell everybody about this. Remember, join us every Thursday. And remember, we are on on Saturdays from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Every single Saturday we are on, we stream live on NutriMost USA on Facebook. So thank you for joining us.